One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
We're back. I'm Marla.
And I am Dave. Like last week, Marla is still in Florida. She's been there for a while helping her dad. And while she was down there, she weathered a storm, a pretty big storm, by the way. And last week, we were telling you about the storm that we have been weathering, like Hurricane Ian. The brunt of the storm has passed, but now we're trying to work our way through the aftermath of the storm itself. I want to remind you guys to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021.
And can I say this, Dave? This is super important. Donate $1. Just make an oath to donate $1. $1 today would help erase the stigma. It'll keep the stigma away. And we've got to erase the stigma with mental health. It has to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that could be $1 for 1 week, $1 for a month, $1 for a year, $1 for life. It's just $1 a day. And that will help us keep the stigma away. Anyway, just to remind you, for those of you who didn't see last week's show, you might want to jump back and catch that show either before or after this show. But I will tell you that we started recounting sort of the situation that we've been dealing with our son, who had a psychotic break, and once again we were thrust into having to deal with an extremely broken mental health care system, and it's broken in so many different ways. We won't even get into that, but today we want to actually go back and kind of readdress some of the questions, or address some of the questions that we were given. Don't move. We'll tell you about it after the break.
When Dave and Marla get together.
Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 to donate. $1 today keeps the stigma away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
All right. We were, like I said, we were telling you about what we've been dealing with our son. He had a psychotic break, a psychotic episode. Police had to be called 3 times, actually. Twice he was taken into custody, and finally one time it seemed like it was going to stick. He was released from the hospital after his 5150, which is a 72-hour involuntary hold. That was changed to a 5250, which is supposed to be a 2-week involuntary hold. What we didn't know is that he's always been released early. We didn't really know why, but we've come to find out that because of the type of insurance that he has, that insurance is only going to pay for 6 days in the hospital, regardless of the type of hold he's supposed to be on, and regardless of how he's supposed to be stabilized. They get to a certain point, and whether you're stabilized or not, boom, you're out the door. So that's what we've been dealing with. He was released to a facility that did not accept him because he was released under false under different auspices that just weren't true. He's not an alcoholic and he's not a drug addict, which is why they were trying to put him and trying to say that he was into this place. When they did their own evaluation, they said, never mind. Our son was lost on the street for 3 days. We finally found him. And as God would have it, a bed opened up into an extremely difficult to acquire bed at a board and care. Where they feed him 3 square meals. His medication is administered by professionals, that type of thing. And like I said, we were just floored when we heard that he was missing on the street, as any loving parents would be. But then once we got him into this, we realized what God was actually doing. He was closing one door, which seemed like the end of the world. I'll be honest with you. And then another door opened, and suddenly there's a ray of sunshine piercing through. Like Marla will know this better than anyone else. Once those thick, heavy storm clouds passed by Florida and the sun started to come through little by little, it gives you some sort of hope. But then after that, we're faced with having to pay for a situation and raise money so that we can actually afford to actually have DJ taken care of in ways that insurance will not cover.
Right.
Marla.
So let me start with the questions. I want to repeat the one that I asked that was leading me into the conversation last week. And the question was, with our son, with DJ having had multiple episodes that have been public, are we able to stop him? Are we able to recognize when this psychosis is going to become an emergency? That's essentially, I'm paraphrasing because I'm not looking at it right now, but that was the question. Dave, are you and I not able to, or are we able to recognize when he's headed down this direction and stop him?
Well, I think what you, Marla, were actually starting to answer before we actually just sort of recounted the story, which ended up taking the entire time last week. The answer is yes. The short answer is yes. We can tell that it's about to happen. The more nuanced answer is while we know how it's going to end, at the time when that psychosis starts to develop, DJ is no longer able to know how it's going to end. And suddenly there's a differentiation between how we look at the problem and how he looks at the problem unmedicated. Once that happens, we know good and well, and we started having to tell DJ, and I started to try to, because Marla was gone down to Florida, I started trying to tell DJ right away, because quite honestly, unfortunately, you have to sort of escalate this situation. I was trying to escalate the situation while Marla was out of town, and it was starting to escalate, but it didn't unfortunately culminate until Marla came back. And the escalation specifically started with this simple realization and statement of fact. DJ, you know how this will end. It never doesn't end with you going to the hospital. Now, there has been a time or two where he actually understood that because he was medicated and he put himself in the hospital. And we praised him for that because that is the most responsible thing anybody with DJ's set of circumstances can do. But unfortunately, this time that didn't happen and the police had to be called.
Another question that is on the table, Dave, is do either one of us recognize that there is a genetic link? We have 2 children that suffer with different mental health issues, according to the things that I have said publicly. And this is a statement. And so is there a genetic component that we're willing to accept as far as our children being plagued with mental illness?
Well,
are you crazy or am I crazy? Is that the question?
I'll put it to you like this. Of course.
Which one of us?
Of course, we are faced with the issue that there's a genetic component. But that's not the only component. There's a genetic component. There's an environmental component. And that part of that has to do with social issues as well. The other real thing is that you don't really know, especially in our African American community, or pretty much all communities of color, it's not until you start we start matriculating through other circles and other societal circles that you find out that some people have been in therapy and they're doing just fine. You wouldn't think that they need to be in therapy, but they've been in therapy pretty much all their lives. They started in therapy when they were in preschool, and it went from one thing to the other. They went through college, and suddenly their life is great. Well, most communities of color put that type of thing under the rug, and they don't really discuss it, and it's not really an issue that we dwell on until it is a over-the-top issue and it's just way out of hand. Because there are a lot of issues that I believe plague cultures of color that are probably mental health issues that we just don't address them that way at all, period. So is there a genetic link? Of course there is. But you won't really know that you're dealing with that type of issue until there is a break. And those breaks are not because of a genetic issue. The breaks come because of environmental stressors.
The next question on the board is, are either one of you afraid that your son will kill you or harm you or himself?
Well,
is there a fear?
I'll put it to you like this. Is the word fear the right word? I've been in a situation where I was pretty sure that in the next little move, my neck was going to be broken. Would I have died from that? I have no idea. But there have been altercations that we've had in our household. One time I reacted in a way that I didn't really appreciate. I said that I would never really physically have an altercation with my son in the way that it happened that first time. And so from that point on, I protect myself, but I don't actually fight back. And so in those issues and in those moments, trust me, I'm well aware, and Marla's been injured. We've both been injured before. But we choose to look at that as not our son attacking us, as the disease that is attacking us. And so we fight back accordingly.
Okay.
Now, Marla, do you want to answer some of these questions as well? You might want to have to save your answer till we come back from this next break. But I want you to weigh in on some of these.
I'll weigh in when we come back.
Unless you've already weighed in, and I'm just unaware.
No,
anyway,
I do a lot more talking online, but I haven't weighed into. I've answered this.
Oh, okay. So
generally.
This is really my turn to answer the question. Oh, perfect. So, and then we'll keep going with the questions when we come back on the other side of this break. Don't move.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
Bipolar disorder affects about 45 million people each year. The World Health Organization says it typically consists of both manic and depressive episodes separated by periods of normal mood.
Manic episodes involve elevated or irritable mood, overactivity, rapid speech, inflated self-esteem, and decreased need for sleep. People who have manic attacks but do not experience depressive episodes are also classified as having bipolar disorder.
Effective treatments are available for the treatment of the acute phase of bipolar disorder and the prevention of relapse. These are medicines that stabilize mood. Psychosocial support is an important component of treatment as well.
If you or someone that you know is suffering with bipolar disorder, hopefully you and or they are in treatment. But if not, please seek professional help immediately. And remember, you're not alone.
This message is brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically live my personality in my sleep.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
All right, so Marla has informed us that these are questions that she posted on social media. She's pretty much answered them herself already on social media.
No. These are questions that I've answered just in conversations that have gone on for a while. And so, but these are questions that there's actually a lot of questions, and the questions are always based on mental health, but a lot of them I find to be more about how you and I are responding or surviving or managing in this situation. So another question that I think is very interesting, and this question has been asked me a million times, and I'm going to ask this directly to you, for you to answer. Do you think are you or Marla willing to consider that your son's issues may stem from a spiritual demon possession and or drug use?
Well, I just want to make this really clear, that I'm not even sure what the appropriate response to be if someone says, and we have friends who pretty much said the same thing about their kids with mental health issues, that it's just a demon. And regardless of what you might think the cause is, whether it's genetic, whether it's a demon, or whether it's any other type of spiritual warfare, and I don't think that type of thing doesn't exist. But the real answer then comes next. What are you going to do about it? Well, Marla and I are an extremely spiritual family, and we thank God that advances in medicine have grown to an extent where whenever these types of situations come up, what we found is when he's medicated and following his therapy and all the therapeutic tools are in place, we don't have these issues. When one of those factors ceases to exist, eventually we come to a break. So that seems, and I'm a scientist by education. So what I would say is that trial and error, that sort of laboratory of life, shows us that it's not a spiritual situation. It is a medical situation to where our son's brain chemistry, which is why we refer to mental health as a brain difference. His brain chemistry needs to be augmented, much like a diabetic. There's certain your chemical makeup, your chemical makeup of your body, it needs to be augmented with medication on a regular basis. If you don't get your insulin and you can't properly metabolize sugar, you will die. If our son doesn't actually have some of these endorphins and some of these other chemicals in his brain, the dopamine in his brain balanced at a certain level, he's going to become episodic. It's just that simple. And so while we do not cast dispersions on anyone who chooses to affect these types of issues from a spiritual perspective, we would also encourage you to remember that there's also another component, which is physical. And we will never say you should medicate somebody until they need it. But when they need it, we definitely suggest that you get to it sooner than later. And I don't know if that answers the question, but that's my perspective.
I'll answer the part of that ask about, is this a result of drug use? Here's what I will say. There are two truths in that statement. I'm sure all of us know somebody, and we're talking about marijuana, who has been smoking weed or marijuana and is productive, and their brains aren't fractured. Their behavior is not fractured.
You have presidents of the United States that get in trouble for smoking, saying that they smoke weed.
At one point, he said he was smoking weed. Is he schizophrenic? No. So what I'm saying to you is, we can't lean on that as a cause. I'm sure it does not help with his brain chemistry, but it's not. I would not call that the reason why. So we'll just leave. I'll leave that at that.
But again, we've advanced as a society to understand that even a substance abuse disorder, which is what it's called in the mental health community, is also a mental health disorder. Most of us who have experimented with partying when we were younger, we grow out of it and we pretty much become productive members of society. For some people, you never know which one of you has that genetic component, which is going to then take that same thing and it becomes a different type of issue. And that becomes an addiction issue. And nowadays, we refer to addiction as a substance abuse disorder. Go ahead, Mar. I'm sorry.
Right. It's all good. Knowing what we know now, looking back, is there something we would have done differently to help our children? I'm gonna take this one first. Most definitely. And to be honest, this conversation is about DJ, but I really feel like I could have impacted Moniece more with certain things that we know now, like dialectic behavioral therapy that could have started when she was very young. If we had understood what we were dealing with, and I mean young, like elementary school age. And I think that I would have been very, very open to all. I was open to all the kids, but I would have been very receptive had I understood the possibility of their mental illness, of their disorders. But they didn't ring true to anything I was familiar with. And so I would have been more receptive to their differences instead of always in love pushing them to live to their potential.
I will say this, like Marla, the short answer is, of course, yes. But one of the other problems with the way we approach mental health in this nowadays is that mental health is the only area of medicine where the first thing that is done is to check the organ that is malfunctioning. And so what ends up happening is, for instance, both of our older children started therapy in elementary school. Matter of fact, Moniece started in elementary school. DJ's first was in junior high. That's true. But they started much younger. And at times when we felt that we still had a good handle on and doing the best we could as parents, and the family seemed like a normal family that didn't have mental health issues to the point where it was going to become episodic. What you don't know is that when they first start therapy, you're kind of just trying to get a group of characteristics together to come up with the diagnosis. And especially before someone turns 18, it's hard to really basically diagnose them with some of the more severe mental illnesses because they just hesitate to do that to young people. And so what I mean by that is, and what that leads me to is, we thought we would, matter of fact, every piece of advice, even when, I will say for me, when I didn't understand and I absolutely disagreed, we still started the therapy, which led to over 7 diagnoses put together for our 2 older children, one of which a diagnosis that Moniece received. Even doctors were going back and forth as to whether or not this was a real disorder. And so some of the treatments weren't even available until she was older. And so, and we've been in constant research about trying to make things better for not just our family, but specifically our children who we love and have sacrificed our entire lives for. And so the answer is, the short answer again, absolutely yes. Again, if you think about it, could you have done anything different? I'm not even sure.
No,
to be honest with you.
You do the best you can do in the moments that you have. And for that, we have absolutely done. And when we come back, we're going to answer the final question separately, Dave. And that is, with all that we have going on, what are we doing to find mental health balance for ourselves?
It's a good one. We'll be back. All right, the fun music lets us know that it's poll time. Marla is now doing a strange pole noise versus her usual pole dancing.
Wait, it starts in my mouth.
Oh, she's laid back. Oh, she's building up. All right. Last week, of course, we were the guest, and so we really couldn't ask someone who wasn't familiar with the questions, unfortunately. But the question last week was, what percentage of adults in the U.S. experience a serious mental illness in a given year? What percentage of U.S. adults experience a serious mental illness in any given year? Your options were A, 4%, B, 10%, or C, 16%. But Tony has the answers.
I'm staring right at it.
He's looking dead at the answer.
I forgot.
What we can do is find out if Tony is a award-winning actor.
Sure.
Well, Tony, act like you're not looking at the answer.
Oh, okay.
Tony, what percentage of adults in the U.S. experience a serious mental illness in any given year?
Should I go off how I used to take a test? C.
Just mark C. Eventually, you can at least get one answer correct. Well, unfortunately, Tony is wrong. The answer is
As
A,
usual.
4%. Marla, what's the poll question for next week?
Wait a minute. What was the assignment to tell Tony to act blind? And
No, to act like, to just put his acting skills to the test and act like he doesn't know the answer.
Horrible, Tony. Horrible.
That's what my teachers used to say.
Next week, the question is, with the rise of U.S. adults with anxiety and depressive disorder, it now rivals prevalence of what other chronic health issue? Obesity, heart disease, or cancer? With the rise in U.S. adults with anxiety and depressive disorder, it now rivals the prevalence of what other chronic health issue?
Now follow our social media, Mental Health Mondays with Marlon Dave, MHM with Marlon Dave on Instagram and other social media sites, and you can see the question there. You can actually weigh in and let us know what you think. We will tell you the answer next week. Remember, text the word GIVE, GIVE, to 818-698-1021. A dollar today keeps the stigma away, and we'll be right back. Right before we actually get to this last question, I want to remind you guys that we've pretty much seen it all when it comes to the spectrum of resources available when it comes to mental health. Our son has been a couple of months in a facility that cost between $20,000 and $35,000 a month, which, come on, you guys. And while it was a great facility, really that just tells us that really great set of resources, all-inclusive, that just takes care of everything, and just even the environment is relaxing to the spirit so that you can really get the help that you need. That's really only available to the uber wealthy. Anyone who can afford $30,000 a month for treatment.
Yeah.
And $30,000 a month, you guys, is between $1,000 and when you get up to 35, 36, $1,000 and $1,500 a day. And I'm just going to leave it there. And we've seen he's been in situations where it just was untenable, even from his perspective. And even as much as we were going through, we said we cannot leave our son in this circumstance. And regardless of its effect on us, we have to bring him back home because our son will die in that particular facility. And right now, I'm still holding it together enough that I'm not calling people out. But I'm pretty sure over time that's going to change because...
Oh, it's definitely going to change for me. I just have to get DJ straight. You know what? Because just like everything else, our experiences we've lived through these things so we can help guide other people.
Yeah, it would be irresponsible of us to not expose the fact.
Exactly.
And to protect just pure
protect other people
nonsense.
Just because you have a brain difference doesn't mean that you're a throwaway human being. And so it's not okay that you have a board and care where you're receiving, $10, $11, $12,000 a head, and you're ridden with bed bugs and the food is not edible.
And you're bombing, you're putting insecticide into the air with the people that are in a zombie-like state, catatonic state, just breathing in the... as if they're not going to die as well. Anyway, we've seen it all. Trust me. Marla, you said you had one last question. We're about to run out of time.
with all that we have going on, what is it that we're able to do to maintain our mental health?
Well, when you're in the throes of it, things that become necessary kind of get pushed to the side, to be honest. But I know I was in therapy, and I just made a call to my therapist last week that we have to re-engage on a more regular basis so that I can actually keep things in perspective. Because even every time you take time out of everything else that we're doing to focus on this issue solely because we're in a crisis, everything else in your life builds up to a situation where it feels like, man, okay, I'm done with this extreme stress, but now I feel an extreme amount of anxiety because I'm so behind on my work that actually pays the bills. And so that's
right.
It's a constant balance for me.
It's literally everything goes into your mind, body, and spirit goes into the focus of the crisis because there's someone there that needs you more than you can need. It takes your attention away from everything else because this is the fire that's currently burning that must be put out.
Absolutely.
And that's the priority. And so that's true. So for me, one of the things, I'm an outreacher. I'm an outreach person, but I'm also spiritually a person who takes time out every day at some point, usually in the morning, usually now it's wee hours in the morning, just to be in silence and to realign. And like Dave said, I too have asked, and shout out to Doug Green for him to give me a list of therapists so I can find and get involved with my own personal therapy. And then you know what? Life is a two-way street. This show also is so beneficial to my spirit. Having the nights on and emerging emotional intelligence and just exchanging that information with Wesley and Stephanie Knight, again, Revisionist Church in Atlanta. You can get it online. Please get there. They're led by the Spirit. They're a spirit-filled, ordained couple that really poured back into an understanding. And sometimes for me, it's just as simple as being heard. It's just that simple. You feel like you're in a hole and you can't be heard. And so those things revitalize me, as well as understanding the purpose that I understand now, no matter how hard I fight, that God designed me to walk in. And that alone is a thing that continues to regenerate strength in me, because other than that, I don't even know a lot of the times how I'm standing.
Right. And so
that's just it for me.
And so like Marla,
I can feel every prayer. That's the truth. There are genuine people out there who are praying for us. And
absolutely.
I'm telling you, I know it to be true that I can feel every genuine prayer.
Absolutely. And so for us, like I said all along, that we're a very spiritual family, and our personal relationship with God is something that I take seriously. I know Marla does as well. And so it's that actually keeps us going. It's that actually turns that we use to turn the things that we have to deal with that seems like pain, and we turn it into a chance to help somebody else, to try to keep someone else from having to go through the long way and be affected and be tossed to and fro with some of these things that we've had to deal with, so that maybe you can get a shortcut to the answers, which is the real reason why we're here at Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave, why we have Loving Beyond Reason, why we partnered with our great partners, NAMI, San Fernando Valley, and all of the professionals that, like Marla said, we have on this particular show, along with our personal therapy that we always have to stay in touch with. But it's these pieces of information that are not, we know that they are supportive to you guys. Why? Because it's supportive to us. And so that's why we really asked you to help us. We're raising money, not just to deal with our son's issues that are unaffordable, but most people who are dealing with the same level of unaffordability in an already broken system. And so
our goal with this fundraiser is $18,000 specifically for Dee's Care, and then to continue to the moon, because we've got to change the system.
And instead of, go ahead, Marla. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm going to hit the ground running, And I'm letting you all know, I'm looking now for teams of people, volunteers, to join me in going door to door and asking and addressing mental health and getting petitions signed that would change the healthcare system sooner rather than later. We need it now.
Always in a series of steps and endeavors that we've become weary of trying to depend on this broken system. And we are now going to demonstrate changes and put in place changes in the system that work better, not just for our loved ones, but for people who suffer with brain differences, as we like to call it, and try to make that those resources more appropriate. And that's we're trying to open up our first Love and Beyond Reason transition home, which would be a series of transition homes that we start here in California that we hope to franchise throughout the United States. Marla has big plans. Like she said, she's already starting community organizing so that we can actually make sure that in our social political systems that this is an issue that is not swept under the rug, and that all the resources that are raised. There are a lot of resources available from the government for mental health. They just don't trickle down to the mental health system because of the bureaucracy that is bogging down the system. And again, another one of the areas why and reasons why the system is absolutely critically
I'm
broken.
no longer waiting for the trickle down. Now I'm ready for the snatch and grab. Let's go get the money.
There you go. We, like Marla said, we appreciate your thoughts and prayers. A lot of times people take that thing for granted. We absolutely do not. We appreciate you reaching out to us. We appreciate the opportunity not only just to share, but to share with a purpose. And that is to help others deal with situations that are similar. Next week, our guest will be Tim Ashby. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a great show as usual. We thank you for allowing us to kind of go over time a little bit this week, and I'm going to see what I can do to help Marla down there in Florida. But we're going to keep this thing going. Absolutely.
I don't really want to say that's really chicken shit of you, but wait for Hurricane Ian, and now you're just going to come. It's all 87 degrees.
Yeah, well, Hurricane Ian looked a little bit different on this coast, which is why I couldn't come down. Anyway, so we'll see you guys next week as Marla does her chicken dance. I don't know who she's talking about. See you guys.
Bye.
It's raw, real, and unfiltered.